nothing to see here. This is just a 40-year-old man in a 20-year-old Japanese car driving through a tunnel. I don't know what the big deal is. Oh, you mean the noise? Ah, there is that. And that. And that. Ooh. But the noise isn't tonight's issue. No. What we need to deal with here is the fact that when I steer, nothing happens, and it feels like the back wants to overtake the front. So yes, the suspension is atrocious, and we need to deal with that immediately. Well, not immediately, because we're still in a tunnel, so, you know. So today is suspension day. Now, I'm going to stipulate a few riders before we begin this. I'm not doing this pinpoint accurate. I just want a car that will drive okay. Not race okay, not handle perfectly. It just needs to go in a straight line, because right now it does not. So we're going to dial it in as close as possible to going straight without all the intricacies of exact camber, toe, cast and all that jazz. Just straight. So, first things first, where do we begin? It is so wildly out because I've just thrown everything on that it's... I'm going to just take a punt on camber. Why? Well, because the car's sitting flat and the cambers are all over the place. It's wildly out. So at least if I can get the camber straight, we can start looking at like caster and toe and all that jazz. But that's wildly out, we know that. So let's get that dialed in as a starter, and if we need to come back to it later, we can. So, how do you dial in camber? Well, what we need to do first of all is measure where the camber's at the moment. It's very important at this stage to start taking notes. And there's a wee bit of prep we need to do before that, but we'll get to that. Anyway, this was about a tenner off of eBay, and it's very, very basic. It's more or less a spirit level, but what it does have is a magnetic flat edge here and a level of adjustment where we can dial in fine tuning. Why do we need that? Well, there's nothing to say that the car's going to be sitting on a level, flat surface. Also, even if it is, and all four corners are level, we might find the whole car sitting like that. So I'm going to take a measurement off of the ground at 90 degrees and use this screw here to offset the exact 0 point. Once I've got that, we know that the car is sitting on level ground. We'll get all of the cambers measured up for each one. Now, where do we take that from? Obviously nowhere on the alloys, because none of that area is flat. You'll notice I popped all the center caps out, and we have nice flat edges on the CV joints. That's going to be my measurement point for all four wheels. Before we start anything on this Impreza, we need to do that good practice thing I spoke about at the start. What does that mean? Well, we don't want to dial in faults on the car. It's quite easy for us to have something slightly out of spec that's easily remedied, and it'll throw all the alignment off once we get going. What kind of things are we talking about here? Tyre pressure. If all my tyre pressures are sitting off, the car will be sitting uneven. They'll need to be balanced, so I'm going to get the pressure gauge on and make sure we're sitting at exactly 20 psi. That might seem low to you. Yeah, it probably is, but these tyres are rated to run at 20 psi because they're semi-slicks. Once we've done all of that, we're then going to check the wheel torques. Again, if one wheel's sitting with far too much torque and the other one isn't, it might throw things off ever so slightly. So I'm going to back the torques off and torque them all to, let's say, about 40 foot-pound. I know that's not a lot, but these wheels are coming on and off constantly, so to retorque them accurately every time, I don't want to be throwing big amounts of torque on. Get them all level, and it will work. visually looked like it was quite a bit out. That proves the point. These are all over the place. So what I'm going to do is, well, probably dial it into maybe about half a degree of camber all the way around. I'll be honest, I might go and actually have a look online and figure out what these are supposed to be. But for the moment, I've got my measurements. Now, why are we measuring all of these in advance? Well, this will tell me how many degrees I need to adjust. Remember, we need to put the car in the air to do this. And if I'm taking the suspension off the ground, all of these measurements will go away because, well, there's no load in the suspension, so it'll all change. So at least that way when the suspension is off the ground, I can put this tool back on, adjust it back to 0, and then dial out all of these measurements so they're where they're supposed to be. That way when I put it back on the ground, it should measure correctly. There's going to be a lot of this having to work on the fly because we're putting the car up in the air and then back down again. This obviously wouldn't be a problem if I had all the proper equipment, but for what it's worth, it's not the worst thing to have to do. Plus it keeps us measured and correct. So, time to put it in the air and see about getting these dialed back into where they should be. We all know the adage, measure twice and cut once. Yeah, I got my positive and negative the wrong way around. Good thing I double checked that. So, we're looking at 2 degrees of positive camber, i.e. the wheel looks like it's hanging off on this side. 1 degree of negative camber, which is actually kind of more or less what I'm going to want to go the whole car with. 0 in this, and 4 degrees of negative camber in this end. So I'm going to have to dial that back in a bit, because that's a bit too extreme. So, that's what I'm looking for. I've had a wee skirmish online, and to be honest, there's so many internet experts, I'm not going to get bogged down in it. Basically, I'm going to go for 0 toe, so it's as neutral as possible, and 1 degree of negative camber all round. That gives me a starter for 10. Something to aim for at least. We'll see if we can get somewhere close to that. So we're starting at the back for no other reason than I can get both sides up with 1 jack. Now, we're looking for 0 degrees to become 1 degree of negative camber here. So, going round to the wheel where we've got that, you'll see the ones that were jacked up, it's still sitting more or less at 0 degrees. So if I'm going to want to add 1 degree of negative, we're going to have to get the bottom of this hub to come out. Now, we don't have any camber adjust on here, so we're going to have to bring it out from here. And this is where the fun begins. Because I have a plethora of options for adjusting this. We can use the bars by slacking them off and adding meat to these. We can also use these camber bolts here. So you start asking the question, why have both? Well, I'm not going to ask the question. I'm just going to use the adjusters here to try and dial it in. We have further compounded fun because we need to move these in equal lengths. Because if we don't, and we only move one, we start dialing in toe to the back. And we're not at the toe stage yet. So whatever I dial out on one side, I can match it on the other. So let's see if we can add a degree with just the bars. Right, we're starting on the front now. I've just got the wheel off and we're about to slacken off. Now I've only got one side to do here, so I'm not going to bother buggering with the other one because it's actually correct. But as a result, it means I'm jacking up on one side. So I have added the delta into this so that I'm sitting to what my reading was, which was +2 camber. So I need to dial this back to -1. It's just simpler to do that and it saves me having to do math in my head. So that's now sitting on the brake disc dialed in with the offset for the tilt of the car. I will say this though, whilst I say the back is done, we may need to go back and revisit it. The passenger side rear, we've definitely dialed out the -4. I'm now sitting at +1 camber because, well, there was a lot of camber to dial out and I've obviously went a wee bit too far with it. But the good thing about this, and I'm not going to beat myself up, is that it shows me that it's got the range to actually move beyond where I need it to go. So it's just a fine adjust. And bearing in mind we're going to go back and bugger with toe, there's not much point in putting it back up and doing it again. I've got a reading. That's pretty tight. That's the problem with the front. It's really just the hub that moves within the strut here. So we try and, oh, that was quite quick. Accurately move this. There we go, -1. That was easy. Hopefully that should be our camera sorted, but we'll put it all back in the deck and have a wee check and a measure. Come here you cheeky little monkey. Because I'm putting these on with the gun as well, I'm going to back them all off and check the torques again. Remember, the gun's probably going to go beyond that torque setting I've set at, so back them off and retort them if you're using the gun. Now we're moving on to phase 2, and for that we're going to need some angle iron and some string. Trust me. Right, it's time for me to explain myself. I left that there to remind me of that camber in the back. So what we've done here is made a very, very rudimentary toe measurement device. And how does this work? Well, we've got 2 bars on the front and the back, and I've cut notches at exactly the same distance between the 2 of them. So what that gives me is a rudimentary square. Now obviously we can have error this way and this way, but we're going to use the car to dial that out. Because what does the car have? Well, 4 hubs. 1, 2, 3 and 4 here. Now when we run our knicker elastic, which is what we're just going to call this from here on in, between these 2 points, I then have an ability to measure in and make sure that I have squared off my measurement device. And you'll have seen I have moved the back and the front depending on how much distance I need to square off on all 4 sides. Now I'll say this right now, I've not got all 4 sides exactly the same distance. The front and rear match here and the front and rear match there. So whatever that is, it doesn't matter as long as it's square around all 4 corners of the car. So now that we're measuring equal here and here, that allows me to do something rather special. If we're looking down from the top, and that's our hub in here and our tyre, and this is the string, we know that that distance is correct for all 4 wheels. What we can now do is measure here, and take off the distance. That will give us the toe on all 4 wheels. So let's measure this up and put some values on the board. And no, it's obviously not going to be correct, because why would it be? So we started with the driver's rear. I have 249mm up here and 254mm down here. That means I have a variance of 6mm. Where is that variance pointing? Well, it's not going to be the way you think. So 249 means it's shallow at the top and deep at the front. Therefore, we are towing in by 6mm on the back. So what I would need to do therefore is dial 3mm in from this rod and 3mm out from that rod. What are the chances of that actually equating to the measurements I need? Pretty slim, because the rods do not meet at the outer edges of the rim. So we're just going to have to kind of suck it and see with this. But let's not go into one wheel at a time. Let's do the measurement on all 4 and see exactly where the toes are for the whole car. For this, I think, will explain a lot of my handling issues. Well, a whole lot of numbers on the board, but they probably wouldn't mean a lot until I start to explain what it's about. So this is our rear settings and this is our front. Now our rear, you'll see we're towing in on both. That's what this arrow thing means. We've got no degrees, because I'm not going to sit here and do the math. We're just going to work at millimetres, because I know it's millimetres we're going to dial out. Remember, we're going for zero toe more or less. So as long as it goes straight and I'm measuring zero, that'll be 0 degrees. So we've got 6mm here and 12mm here. So that gives us a 9mm total toe in across the back end. So that will need to dial out. That'll probably explain why it feels, well, just a bit rotten in the back. If we don't dial that out, it's going to be very, very tail happy, which isn't a big problem in a 4-wheel drive, but I don't really want that, and it's just going to kill my tyres. The fronts, however, you'll notice that we've got 10mm going that way, and also 6mm going that way. So we've actually only got a delta of 4mm of toe in on the front. Now, now think about this, we've also got a variable on the front wheels that we need to consider. They can be steered. So I don't want to get too hung up on the fact that both of these seem to be towing out. All of that delta could actually be the wheel just not being aligned. I'm not going to get that dialed in. I'm just going to leave it, if I'm being honest. Aye, that's right, leave it. 4mm toe in could be as much as a degree or two. If you think about the math, I can probably take that to somebody and just get the tie rod sorted. Another reason why I'm not getting hung up there, the tie rods. I've not disrupted any of this. So there's a good chance that this is as it's been in the front, because all we've done is add coilovers. So again, my principal focus is going to be sorting the back end, because that's where we've done all the work. So let's see if we can get 9mm of toe back out and get it running straight. I'm going to have fun with this. How do I jack this up and work under it? Yeah, I guess we're disassembling all this and then resetting up everything. Right, we've got it between 2 and 3mm out, and it's also 2 and 3mm in the same direction, which means I've actually only got 1mm of toe, but just a slight crab. I mean, there's not a lot of adjustment on here, and I'm going to be at this for a long time. Honestly, you can throw a millimetre out just locking these things off. I think that's probably going to be as close as I can get it. Plus, every time I'm jacking it up, I'm having to take the jig out of the way, put it back, reset it, measure it. I'm kind of wary I'm going to end up dialing in an error at some point and just making this job harder than it is. So, I think we're done. Toes are dialed in, camber's dialed in. Let's take a drive and see if it made any difference. Test drive. Let's see if I have sorted out my handling. First proper corner coming up. Go. No. It's just a dead zone in the middle of the steering, man. Homicidal handling, suicidal steering. This car wishes me harm. So I've redrawn this out. Who spotted the deliberate mistake in my math? Clearly I didn't. We're towing out massively, I hope, otherwise I've got serious problems with this car. Okay, take 2 with handling properly done, i.e. my math being checked. Please don't kill me, car. Oh, I feel less dead zone, that's a good start. Ah, son, oh, what I'm talking about. Steering feel again. Oh, you beauty. There's no better feeling than a car that fucking handles good. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, oh, back made it handle.